Did you know that the absence of sex might be transforming you into something far beyond ordinary? While the world chases instant pleasure, some human beings are undergoing a silent and profound metamorphosis. There is a force within you that, when not released in conventional ways, seeks other paths, and these paths can lead to either genius or destruction. Living without sex has a price that can either destroy or elevate. The chosen ones, those who live without sex, voluntarily or involuntarily, are experiencing changes in body and mind that science is still trying to understand. Some report inexplicable perceptive powers. Others speak of unbearable psychological agony. Repressed sexual energy doesn't disappear. It transforms, infiltrates, creates shadows, or awakens dormant potentials. But what are the true consequences? Why do only some survive this journey while others collapse mentally and physically? What you're about to discover could completely change your understanding of sexuality, spirituality, and true human potential. Inside every human being flows a river of raw power. This isn't poetic language or spiritual fantasy. It's the fundamental truth that Carl Jung spent decades exploring. He called it libido, but not in the limited way most people understand the term. This is life force itself, the energy that makes your heart beat faster when you see someone attractive, the same energy that drives artists to create masterpieces at 3 in the morning, the same force that pushes entrepreneurs to risk everything for a vision only they can see. When this river finds its natural course through sexual expression, it flows predictably. The build-up, the release, the temporary peace, then the cycle begins again. But what happens when you dam this river? When the chosen ones, by choice or circumstance, stop this natural flow? The energy doesn't vanish into thin air. Energy cannot be destroyed. It can only change form. This transformation is where everything becomes fascinating and dangerous at the same time. The sexual energy begins seeking alternative channels, like water finding cracks in a dam. Some people experience this as restlessness that won't let them sleep. Others feel it as an unexplainable urge to create, to build, to express something they can't quite name. The body is confused. It was designed for a specific outlet, and now that outlet is closed. Jung observed that this redirection could take two completely opposite paths. The first path leads upward, what he described as sublimation. The raw sexual energy transforms into creative power, intellectual breakthroughs, artistic expression, or spiritual experiences. History is filled with individuals who channeled their sexuality into extraordinary achievements. They didn't just suppress their desires, they transformed them into something else entirely. But there's a second path, and this one leads downward into the shadows. When the energy has nowhere to go, and the person lacks awareness or tools to redirect it consciously, it turns inward. It becomes obsession, compulsion, anxiety that eats you from the inside. The mind starts playing tricks. Fantasies become more intense, more intrusive. Some people develop fixations that disturb them. Others experience what feels like their personality changing without permission. The key difference between these two paths isn't willpower or moral strength, it's awareness. The chosen ones who survive and thrive are those who recognize what's happening inside them. They feel the pressure building, and instead of fighting it or pretending it doesn't exist, they ask, where can this energy go? What can it become? Your body knows something is different. Even if your conscious mind rationalizes the situation, your physical form recognizes that a natural pattern has been interrupted. Hormones don't care about your reasons or your spiritual goals. They follow ancient programming that's been refined over millions of years. When sex stops, your endocrine system begins adjusting, recalibrating, trying to find a new balance. This is where the transformation becomes real and measurable. Testosterone levels may fluctuate wildly before stabilizing at a new baseline. For some, this means decreased levels. For others, surprisingly, levels can increase as the body attempts to motivate sexual behavior. The brain chemistry shifts too. Dopamine pathways that were regularly activated by sexual activity or even the pursuit of sexual activity suddenly go quiet. Your reward system needs to find new targets. The chosen ones often report a strange phenomenon in the first few months. Time feels different. Days seem longer, heavier somehow. This isn't imagination. Your brain literally processed time differently when it was anticipating or remembering sexual experiences. Remove that framework, and perception changes. Some describe it as waking up from a dream they didn't know they were having. But here's what most people miss. This energy doesn't just sit waiting for permission. It actively searches for expression. If you're not consciously directing it, your unconscious mind will do it for you, and the unconscious doesn't always choose wisely. It might push the energy into workaholism, into obsessive exercise, into endless scrolling through social media, into compulsive eating, into rage that explodes at small provocations. The ancient practices knew this secret. Monks who took vows of celibacy weren't just white-knuckling their way through temptation. The successful ones developed elaborate systems to transmute sexual energy into devotional practices, into meditation, into service. They gave the energy somewhere to flow. The ones who failed, who broke down or broke their vows, were usually those who tried to simply suppress without transformation. What makes someone a chosen one isn't the absence of sex itself. It's what they do with the enormous power that becomes available when that energy is no longer dispersed through sexual release. Some waste it in distraction and neurosis. Others forge it into something that changes their entire trajectory as a human being. The energy is neutral. The direction is everything. And as we'll discover, your body has its own voice in this process, speaking in a language most people never learn to understand. Your body begins speaking within the first week, but most people don't recognize the language. They dismiss the signals as stress, as aging, as random fluctuations that mean nothing. But these aren't random at all. The physical form is responding to a fundamental shift in how energy moves through your system. The symptoms can be subtle at first, then become impossible to ignore. Sleep changes almost immediately for the chosen ones. Not just difficulty falling asleep, though that's common enough. The quality of sleep transforms. Dreams become more vivid, more bizarre, sometimes disturbing in their intensity. Some people report dreaming more about sex than they ever thought about it while awake. The unconscious mind is processing the dammed-up energy, creating elaborate scenarios, trying to find release even in sleep. Others experience the opposite. Dreams become abstract, symbolic, filled with imagery that feels meaningful but impossible to interpret. Night sweats appear without explanation. Your body temperature regulation seems off. You wake up at 3 in the morning with your heart racing for no apparent reason. Medical tests show nothing wrong, but you know something has changed. This is your endocrine system recalibrating, trying to find equilibrium without the regular hormonal cycles that sexual activity provided. Energy levels become unpredictable. Some chosen ones report feeling electric, like they've had too much caffeine even when they haven't touched any stimulants. They feel restless, their leg bouncing under the desk, an urge to move that won't quiet down. This is excess energy with nowhere to go, manifesting as physical agitation. Others experience the opposite, a deep fatigue that sleep doesn't fix, like their battery is slowly draining with no way to recharge. The skin changes in ways that seem disconnected from anything else. Some people break out like teenagers despite being decades past puberty. Others find their skin becomes clearer than it's been in years. The sebaceous glands respond to shifting hormone levels, producing more or less oil, changing how your face looks and feels. You might notice you smell different too. Your natural scent alters because the chemical composition of your sweat has changed. Muscle tension becomes a constant companion for many chosen ones. The jaw clenches without awareness. Shoulders creep up toward the ears and stay there for hours. Lower back pain appears or intensifies. This isn't poor posture or a bad mattress. This is energy locked in the body with no release valve. Sexual activity provides a natural full-body relaxation response. Remove that, and the tension accumulates like sediment in a river that's stopped flowing. The heart does strange things, palpitations that come out of nowhere, a feeling of pressure in the chest that makes you wonder if something is seriously wrong. Again, medical tests typically show normal results. This is the cardiovascular system responding to changed hormone levels and the stress of redirecting powerful biological drives. Your heart is literally working harder to process emotions and energy that used to have a clear outlet. Digestion becomes unreliable. The gut, which scientists now call the second brain, is intimately connected to your emotional and sexual life. When sexual patterns change, gut patterns follow. Some chosen ones develop constipation that persists despite diet changes. Others experience the opposite problem. The enteric nervous system is responding to the overall shift in how your nervous system operates. Weight fluctuates in unexpected ways. Some people lose weight effortlessly, as if their metabolism has suddenly accelerated. The body is burning the excess energy somewhere. Others gain weight despite eating the same or even less, particularly around the midsection. This is cortisol, the stress hormone, rising in response to the body's interpretation of sexual abstinence as a stressor. The eyes change too, though this one sounds almost mystical until you understand the mechanism. Some chosen ones report that their vision seems sharper, colors more vivid. Others find their eyes are frequently dry or irritated. The tear film chemistry is influenced by sex hormones, particularly in women. Change the hormone levels. Change how your eyes function. Immune function shifts, though whether it strengthens or weakens varies dramatically between individuals. Some chosen ones stop getting sick as often, as if their body has extra resources to devote to defense now that sexual energy isn't being expended. Others become more susceptible to every cold and flu that passes through their environment. The immune system and the reproductive system share resources and signaling pathways. Alter one, and you alter the other. Perhaps most unsettling for many are the phantom sensations. The body remembers what it's not getting. Some people feel phantom touch, like invisible hands on their skin. Others experience spontaneous arousal at random, inconvenient times, the body attempting to initiate the missing pattern. These aren't just mental phenomena. They're the nervous system firing in familiar sequences, even without the usual triggers. Balance and coordination can subtly decline. Sexual activity requires and maintains certain neural pathways related to body awareness and movement. When these pathways aren't regularly used, they can weaken slightly. You might find yourself slightly clumsier, bumping into things more often, your proprioception just slightly off. The voice sometimes changes in pitch or tone, particularly noticeable in people who speak or sing professionally. Sex hormones influence the vocal cords and the tissues of the throat. Shift the hormones, shift the voice. Some chosen ones find their voice becomes deeper or raspier. Others notice it becoming lighter or more strained. These physical symptoms aren't problems to be fixed with pills or supplements. They're the body's way of announcing that everything has changed. The question isn't how to stop the symptoms. The question is whether you're listening to what they're telling you, because your mind is next, and the changes there go far deeper than anything happening in your flesh. The body speaks first. The psyche follows. And that's where things become truly dangerous or truly transcendent, depending on which path you walk. By the way, if you're curious to go even deeper and integrate your shadows and light, check out the Sim Method ebook. It's a concise guide that can help you unlock your inner power in just 5 minutes a day. The link is in the first pinned comment below. There's a part of you that you've never met. It lives in the basement of your mind, collecting everything you've rejected, denied, or refused to acknowledge about yourself. Jung called this the shadow. It's not evil, though it can do evil things. It's simply everything you decided you're not allowed to be. And when sexual energy stops flowing through its normal channels, the shadow gets fed. It grows stronger, bolder, harder to ignore. Most people live their entire lives without confronting their shadow directly. Sexual activity, among other things, provides a release valve that keeps this dark twin manageable. The intensity of sexual experience, the temporary ego dissolution that comes with it, the physical exhaustion afterward, all these serve as pressure relief. When that relief disappears, pressure builds in the depths, and eventually, what's been hidden starts clawing its way to the surface. The first sign is usually intrusive thoughts. Not just the sexual fantasies that everyone expects. Those are obvious and relatively easy to understand. The disturbing part is when other thoughts appear, thoughts that seem to come from someone else. Violent images, taboo scenarios, ideas that make you question who you really are. The chosen ones often panic when this begins, thinking they're losing their sanity or revealing some hidden depravity. But this is simply the shadow making itself known. These thoughts aren't predictions of future behavior or revelations of your true nature. They're the psyche's way of processing the massive energy that's been redirected. The unconscious mind doesn't operate by social rules or moral codes. It deals in raw symbols, primal urges, archetypal patterns. When you deny it one form of expression, it experiments with others, sometimes shocking ones, to see what you'll allow. Anger becomes a constant companion for many who walk this path. Not the healthy anger that motivates change or protects boundaries. This is something deeper, colder, more volatile. Small annoyances trigger disproportionate rage. Someone chews too loudly and you fantasize about violence. Traffic makes you want to scream until your throat bleeds. This rage is sexual energy wearing a different mask. The passion that could flow into intimacy instead flows into fury. Depression crashes over some chosen ones like a wave they never saw coming. Not sadness about lacking sex, though that might be part of it. This is a profound emptiness, a sense that color has drained from the world. Nothing tastes as good. Music doesn't move you the same way. Laughter feels forced and fake. This is the psyche's response to having a primary source of pleasure and connection removed. The brain is literally experiencing withdrawal, similar to coming off an addictive substance. Jealousy and envy intensify to poisonous levels. You see couples and something twists in your gut. Friends talk about their relationships and you smile while something dark unfolds inside you, wishing for their failure, their pain. This isn't who you want to be, but the shadow doesn't care about your aspirations. It wants what it wants, and it will make you feel every bit of the deprivation. Some chosen ones develop obsessive behaviors that seem unrelated to sex. Suddenly, you're reorganizing your closet for the 5th time this month. Or you can't stop researching conspiracy theories. Or you're checking your bank account 20 times a day. These compulsions are the mind's attempt to create a sense of control and completion when the natural cycle of tension and release has been interrupted. The energy needs somewhere to complete itself, so it latches onto available patterns. Paranoia creeps in for others. You start seeing threats that aren't there, reading malice into neutral interactions, building elaborate theories about who's against you and why. The shadow contains not just your rejected impulses, but also your repressed perceptions, things you noticed but didn't want to acknowledge, people's true intentions that you pretended not to see. When the shadow strengthens, these perceptions flood back, but without context or proportion. Everything becomes suspicious. The judgmental voice in your head becomes deafening. You criticize yourself mercilessly for thoughts you can't control, for urges you didn't choose to have, for being unable to transcend your biology through sheer willpower. This internal judge is actually the shadow projected outward. The parts of yourself you can't accept get turned into weapons against yourself. The chosen ones who suffer most are usually those who believe they should be above their struggles. Projection becomes automatic and unconscious. You see in others what you can't acknowledge in yourself. That person is too sexual, too needy, too desperate. That one is repressed, cold, dead inside. You're not really seeing them. You're seeing your own shadow reflected back, and you hate it because on some level you recognize it. Every harsh judgment you make of others is usually something you're terrified of being yourself. Some chosen ones experience dissociation, a disconnection from their own body and experiences. Life starts feeling like a movie you're watching rather than a reality you're living. This is a defense mechanism against the intensity of what's happening internally. When the shadow's demands become too loud and the conscious mind can't reconcile them with who you think you should be, the psyche simply splits. You float above your life, numb, going through motions without presence. The trickster energy emerges in strange ways. You find yourself lying about small things for no reason, creating drama where there was peace, sabotaging your own progress right when success is within reach. This isn't conscious self-destruction. This is the shadow playing, trying to create the intensity and aliveness that sexual energy used to provide. If it can't have pleasure, it will settle for chaos. Spiritual bypassing becomes a trap for those who frame their abstinence in elevated terms. You convince yourself you're above such base needs, that you're evolving beyond your animal nature, that your suffering is noble. But underneath this shiny spiritual identity, the shadow is gorging itself on repressed sexuality, becoming bloated and monstrous. The higher you try to fly without doing the deep work, the heavier the shadow grows, until it eventually drags you down with terrible force. The dreams become battlegrounds. Not just the sexual dreams, but nightmares where you're chased, attacked, overwhelmed. These are direct messages from the shadow, showing you what happens when you refuse to acknowledge parts of yourself. The chosen ones who pay attention to these dreams, who engage with them, rather than dismissing them as random neurons firing, often navigate this path more successfully. The dreams are trying to help, even when they're terrifying. Some experience what feels like a splitting of the self. One part of you continues with daily life, responsible and functional. Another part, hidden but powerful, fantasizes about burning it all down, running away, becoming someone completely different. This isn't mental illness. This is the natural response to denying a fundamental drive. The psyche creates alternative selves to contain what the conscious self won't accept. But here's the crucial truth that determines whether the shadow destroys you or transforms you. This darkness isn't your enemy. It's raw material. Every dark thought, every disturbing urge, every moment of rage or envy or despair is energy that can be worked with, understood, integrated. The chosen ones who try to fight their shadow, to push it back down into the basement, inevitably lose that fight. The ones who survive, who grow, who transmute this experience into something valuable, are those who turn toward the darkness and ask it what it needs. Because what's happening in your mind is about to take an even stranger turn. The darkness is just the beginning. Beyond it lies territory that most humans never access, capacities that seem impossible until they activate in you. Your mind is preparing for something that sounds like fiction, but feels terrifyingly real. Something shifts in your perception around month 3 or 4. The world looks the same, but you see it differently. You notice patterns you never noticed before. Coincidences multiply. You think of someone and they call minutes later. You walk into a room and sense the emotional tension before anyone speaks. You dream of events that later happen in waking life. Either you're developing abilities that were dormant, or you're descending into magical thinking that will separate you from reality. The line between awakening and delusion has never been thinner. The chosen ones report these experiences so consistently that dismissing them as fantasy becomes difficult. Jung himself documented similar phenomena in people who redirected their libido away from conventional outlets. He didn't call them supernatural powers. He called them heightened functions of the psyche that emerge when energy previously devoted to reproduction becomes available for other purposes. Whether that's a scientific explanation or a spiritual one depends on your perspective. The experiences themselves remain the same either way. Intuition sharpens to an almost uncomfortable degree. You know things without knowing how you know them. Someone is lying, and you're certain of it before you have any evidence. A job offer feels wrong despite looking perfect on paper, and you turn it down only to discover later you dodged a disaster. This isn't mystical. This is your unconscious mind, now supercharged with redirected energy, processing micro-signals that your conscious awareness misses. Your brain is picking up on subtle cues in body language, tone, word choice, timing, and delivering conclusions without showing you the work. Time perception warps in fascinating ways. Some chosen ones describe moments of expanded awareness where a few seconds feel like minutes, allowing them to process information and make decisions with unusual clarity. Athletes call this being in the zone. Martial artists call it mushin, no mind. It's a state where the thinking mind steps aside and a deeper intelligence takes over. When sexual energy isn't being regularly discharged, some people find this state easier to access. Creativity explodes for certain individuals. Artists produce their best work. Writers find words flowing like never before. Musicians hear melodies that seem to come from somewhere beyond themselves. This isn't mysterious when you understand the mechanism. The same neural pathways involved in sexual arousal and satisfaction overlap significantly with those involved in creative inspiration and aesthetic experience. Redirect the energy from one to the other, and the creative circuits light up with unusual intensity. Empathy deepens to the point of being overwhelming. You feel other people's emotions as if they were your own. Walk through a crowd and you're bombarded with the collective mood. Spend time with someone depressed and their heaviness seeps into you. This heightened sensitivity can feel like a gift or a curse. Some chosen ones learn to use it, becoming exceptional therapists, negotiators, or artists who capture human emotion with uncanny accuracy. Others are simply battered by it, unable to distinguish their feelings from the emotional weather around them. Synchronicities multiply beyond what probability would suggest. The right book falls off a shelf. A stranger says exactly what you needed to hear. Events align in ways that feel orchestrated by some invisible intelligence. Jung believed these meaningful coincidences revealed the connection between mind and matter, between inner psychological states and outer circumstances. Whether that's true, or whether your brain is simply better at noticing patterns when it's operating in this heightened state, remains an open question. Meditation becomes effortless for some chosen ones who previously struggled with it. The monkey mind that wouldn't stop chattering suddenly quiets. You drop into stillness like falling through a trapdoor. Hours pass in what feels like minutes. This makes sense from an energy perspective. Sexual thoughts are among the most persistent and distracting for most people. Remove those, and the mental landscape becomes less crowded, easier to navigate. Some report experiences of expanded consciousness that sound like psychedelic trips without any substances, feeling merged with nature during a walk, sensing the interconnection of all things, experiencing moments where the boundary between self and other dissolves. These aren't hallucinations, they're shifts in how the brain processes and interprets sensory information. The ego structures that normally maintain a rigid sense of separation can temporarily soften when the energy that reinforces them is redirected. Memory becomes strange. Some chosen ones develop almost photographic recall for certain things while forgetting others completely. You remember conversations word for word, but can't recall what you ate for breakfast. This selective enhancement happens because the brain is redistributing resources. Areas related to survival, social intelligence, and pattern recognition get boosted, while more mundane functions receive less energy. Physical sensitivity increases dramatically. Food tastes more intense. Music produces physical sensations in your body. Light and color become almost overwhelming in their vividness. Your nervous system, without the regular intense stimulation of sexual activity, recalibrates its sensitivity settings. The volume gets turned up on all incoming signals. The world becomes richer, more textured, but also more exhausting to navigate. Thought becomes faster and more complex. You find yourself thinking in multiple tracks simultaneously, following several chains of reasoning at once. Conversations feel slow because your mind is racing ahead, seeing where things will go before they get there. This cognitive acceleration can be exhilarating or maddening, depending on whether you learn to harness it or get swept away by it. But here's where things become dangerous. Not all of these experiences indicate genuine development. The mind can also create elaborate fantasies to compensate for what it's missing. Grandiosity creeps in. You start believing you're special, chosen, evolving beyond ordinary humans. You interpret every synchronicity as a personal message from the universe. You convince yourself that your intuitions are infallible. This is where many chosen ones lose their way. They mistake heightened mental activity for enlightenment. They confuse increased sensitivity for spiritual advancement. They build entire belief systems around experiences that are actually just neurological responses to changed energy patterns. The danger isn't in the experiences themselves. The danger is in the stories you tell about them. Some develop psychosis that looks spiritual, but is actually the mind fragmenting under pressure. They hear voices they interpret as spirit guides. They see visions they believe are prophecies. They develop elaborate theories about reality that isolate them from human connection. The line between mystical experience and mental breakdown is determined largely by whether the person maintains functioning in the real world and connection to other humans. Others fall into conspiracy thinking, which provides the same feeling of special knowledge and hidden patterns that mystical experiences provide, but directs it toward paranoia instead of growth. Everything is a sign. Nothing is random. There are no coincidences, only evidence of the grand plan you're uniquely able to perceive. This feels like awakening, but it's actually the mind creating false order to manage the chaos of redirected energy. The chosen ones who navigate this territory successfully are those who hold their experiences lightly. They notice the enhanced perception without building an identity around it. They enjoy the synchronicities without needing them to mean anything cosmic. They use the increased energy for practical creation rather than abstract speculation. They test their intuitions against reality rather than assuming they're always right. Because what determines whether these mental changes lead to genius or madness isn't the experiences themselves. It's whether you stay grounded in the physical world and maintain honest relationships with people who will tell you when you're losing touch. The mind can soar to incredible heights when freed from sexual preoccupation, but it can also drift into delusional territories that look like enlightenment from the inside while appearing insane from the outside. And for some chosen ones, the pressure becomes too much. The transformation that's supposed to elevate them instead breaks them in ways that can't always be repaired. That's the territory we must examine next, because the success stories are only half the truth. The truth that no one wants to speak is this: you are standing at a crossroads between evolution and dissolution, and the path you're walking offers no middle ground. The energy now coursing through you, seeking new channels and creating new patterns, will either forge you into something extraordinary or fragment you into pieces too scattered to reassemble. Every heightened perception, every synchronicity, every moment of expanded awareness is simultaneously a gift and a test. The question isn't whether these experiences are real; they are as real as anything you've ever felt. The question is whether you possess the wisdom to integrate them without losing yourself, the humility to question them without dismissing them, and the courage to continue when the darkness grows so thick that transcendence and madness become indistinguishable, because you cannot go back to who you were, and the person you're becoming has not yet fully emerged. You exist in the terrifying space between, and what happens next will determine not just your mental state, but the entire trajectory of your remaining years on this earth.